Let's get back to the question we've been asking. Are powerful men in politics getting a free pass? And is there a double standard? One Democratic congresswoman says there is.
Why are the rules for politicians in Washington different than they are for everyone else? And the list is endless. Compare what happened to Harvey Weinstein, Louis C.K., Mark Halperin, all appropriate consequences. And yet, once we start getting into the realm of politicians, well, let's get the Ethics Commission into it, and, let's investigate this. People are sick and tired of the rules in Washington for politicians like me being different than they are for regular people.
For more, let's bring in California Democrat Jackie Speier, one of the co-sponsors of the Me Too Congress Act, who has shared her own story of sexual harassment, Republican Barbara Comstock of Virginia, and co-sponsor of a resolution mandating anti-harassment and anti-discrimination training for both members and staff during each session of Congress, former Congresswoman and member of the House Ethics Committee, Donna Edwards, and Zainab Salbi, founder of Women for Women International. Welcome to all of you. And I want to start with you, Congresswoman Speier. I want to first get your reaction to your colleague, Kathleen Rice, who we just heard. She is the first Democrat calling for Representative Conyers to resign. Here's what she said in a statement. I've reviewed the allegations against him, and they're as credible as they are repulsive. If men who engage in this behavior suffered real repercussions, more victims would speak up, and maybe other men would decide to act like decent, civilized adults and not prey on women who work for and trust and admire them. Do you believe the allegations against Representative Conyers and agree that he should step down as a result?
I think that the allegations are very serious, and that's why the Ethics Committee needs to move very swiftly, not wait years, but very swiftly, staff up if necessary, to determine whether or not those allegations are accurate. And if they're accurate, I do believe that Congressman Conyers should step down.
So you can't say at this moment whether you believe them?
Well, I don't think we know. I think that that's why the Ethics Committee needs to be brought in. I think we are presumed innocent until proven guilty. And while this is not a court of law, it's the court of public opinion, I do think that they are very serious.
Okay, and Representative Edwards, you sat on the House Ethics Committee. This settlement payment came from Conyers' office account, not that $17 million in settlements of the Office of Compliance. How difficult will it be to determine the scope and cost of those settlements?
Well, I think it's incredibly difficult. And keep in mind that the Compliance Office was not part of the ethics process. And I'm not really sure the ethics process as it exists right now is appropriate to deal with these issues, because I think that there has to, at least for this time period, be some process set up where staff and members can come forward. It will help to get to the bottom of this in the Congress. It will also help to set up a process by which these things don't happen again.
Congresswoman Stockman, Comstock, you began as an intern on Capitol Hill, then a staffer. You're now a congresswoman. You've talked about some of the harassment you've heard about on the Hill, but does the scope of this surprise you?
Well, the truth is we don't know what the entire scope of it is. I do agree with Kathleen Rice in that there needs to be one standard for members. And that's why this week we are going to pass the resolution that you mentioned that I introduced with my colleagues. It will mandate training for all members and staff, but that is just a small beginning. What we're then going to do is have more hearings on best practices, have in-person training, so it's much more interactive. So our youngest staffers, interns like I was, are going to know what their rights are and know maybe some of the dangers that are out there. We're going to say, no more secret payments, no taxpayer payments for any of this, and we need to know a lot more about that. That's what we've now asked for, more details on what type of harassment is really going on. We don't know at this point. We're hearing anecdotes, people are coming to us, but that's why one of the things that's in Congresswoman Speier's bill and something that I think we all have consensus on is having a survey from staff so you know what are the ongoing issues. But we know when you have strong training, zero tolerance, and you start enforcing it. I mean, look, the media and the corporate America has been firing people. Charlie Rose, here at ABC, Mark Halperin. You have Roger Ailes at Fox. We have to have the same kind of standards when credible people come forward, and the Peggy Noonan piece that Tim Scott talked about, this was detailed reporting. Predators do things over and over. So when you do that detailed type of reporting and these stories come forward, yes, I believe them because they have details, they're patterns. This is what predators do. And we need to understand, as do the staffers, who the predators are.
I want to talk a little bit. I want to talk about a little bit with you, Congresswoman Speier, about the process they now go through, which is quite extraordinary. If a victim would like to report sexual harassment, they have 180 days to do so with the Office of Compliance. Once that claim is processed, victims are required to undergo 30 days of counseling, then 15 days to decide if they would like to pursue mediation. That is another 30-day process that is confidential and would either result in a settlement or yet another 30-day period. You get the idea. At a minimum, you're looking at a 2-month process once the claim is processed. How did this happen? How did this convoluted system happen? And what do you do next?
You know, I would agree, Martha. It's convoluted, but more than that, I think it was a system set up in 1995 to protect the harasser. This is not a victim-friendly process. And one victim who I spoke with said, you know, the process was almost worse than harassment. So this is an absolutely priority that we must focus on in terms of fixing the system. Doing the sexual harassment prevention training is one step. It's a good step, but it's a small step. The whole system needs to have a comprehensive shift, and that's why my legislation would, first of all, have it also apply to interns and fellows, which right now they have nowhere to go. You would not have a mandatory mediation if you don't want to pursue it, and you will not be subject to a mandatory non-disclosure agreement. Beyond that, we would have a climate survey to make sure that we know moving forward what the climate is, much like we do in the military now, to determine whether or not sexual harassment and sexual assault continues to be a serious issue. We say zero tolerance, but I don't believe that we put our money where our mouths are.
And I want to follow up with you, Zainab. Congresswoman Comstock mentioned this. Obviously, Charlie Rose fired from PBS, from CBS. What is really at the root of this? We talk about power. Is it power? Or is it more than that?
Well, it is power, but I think it is a culture at large that has been complacent in the discrimination against women. The way I see it, one American woman still getting paid 78 cents to every dollar, it's related to men feeling that they're allowed to touch women or date women or do whatever with women in inappropriate ways. It is, we have to look at the larger cultural issues. Otherwise, what I'm fearing right now is that we're addressing the head of the issues. We're cutting the heads out, which is important because deterrence and fear that I will lose my job and power and all of that is important enough to actually stop men from doing. But we need to look at the body. And the body includes women who are in lower ranking positions, who could be the waitresses. The body allows for the sexualization of women and the discrimination and not treating women equally.
But when you talk about the sexualization of women, and I've heard you say this rather provocatively, that women are responsible for the culture as well, and the way they dress, and that,
no,
that
I
sounds
didn't say
like
that.
victim
Not at
shaming.
all, not at all, not at all. But I'm talking about the systems. When you talk about the fashion industry, for example, or the modeling industry, or the Hollywood industry, yes, women have played a role. We played a role in our silence, first of all, in seeing some of the things that are wrong behaviors and staying silent about it. In our own silence when it happened to us, in seeing it in front of others and did not happen. And sometimes in how we co-created a culture that is sexualizing ourselves.
Congresswoman Edwards, former Congresswoman, I want to get your take on that.
Well, I mean, look, I think that, you know, when I look at where we've had these allegations, we've largely focused on them in the public in white collar industries and fields in the Congress and politics. And I worry about the woman who's on the manufacturing floor, who's the waitress in a restaurant, that if we don't deal with this straightforward in Congress and politics, then they will feel powerless, even more powerless than they are right now.
And I just want you to have the last word quickly here. Does President Trump's defense of Roy Moore hurt this?
Well, I think we have there's so much support, bipartisan support. That's going to be a political issue, but I've already said that I think Roy Moore should step aside the way Tim Scott did, but it's important for us to focus on these victims. I wanted to mention the whole process that you just talked about with Jackie Speier. There is a broad consensus to get rid of a lot of that, so it's much more victim friendly. The first woman who was impacted, who brought a suit, Dorina Bertucci, she recommended we have an ombudsman or a victims council. So those are the kind of things that we need to focus on. So the focus is on the victims, not all on the men, and it is largely male offenders. Let's focus on these women so they feel like these recent stories that have come forward in torrents, and 35 victims of Bill Cosby, dozens of all of these people. When this comes forward, we need to respect it, and we need to protect the woman and make sure it doesn't happen anymore, and there are consequences.
Okay, thanks to all of you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.